you wanted the best, you've got the best podcast. The hottest podcast in the world. The Chris Voss Show, the preeminent podcast with guests so smart you may experience serious brain bleed. The CEOs, authors, thought leaders, visionaries, and motivators. Get ready. Strap yourself in. Keep your hands, arms, and legs inside the vehicle at all times, because you're about to go on a monster education roller coaster with your brain. Now, here's your host, Chris Voss.
Hi, folks. It's Voss here from thechrisvossshow.com. Ladies and gentlemen, there are these things that makes official. Welcome to 16 years, 24 episodes of the Chris Voss Show. We've been doing this so long, my back is tired already, and I can't feel my legs, but we're still going to keep on keeping it on. Go to goodreads.com/Chris Voss, LinkedIn.com/Chris Voss, Chris Voss1 on the TikTok, and Chris Voss. Facebook.com. You ever have one of those people that's in your Facebook feed and they write this really smart, intelligent stuff, very philosophitic?
That's good.
I got a new title for you, Tom. Philosophitic. Most people don't know, but that's my poetic license there at work. And you're like, where did I ever end up following someone this darn smart on this dumb of a platform, which is, how Facebook is. I've seen Mark Zuckerberg. I'm not impressed. Anyway, and so one day I saw some really interesting stuff he posted about his book. And I was like, hey, let's get you on the show, darn it. And he's like, I've been waiting for years for you to ask. And I was like, you should have told me. Anyway, we have Tom Morris on the show. He's a philosopher, brilliant mind, and multi-book author, I should say as well. He has written one of the books we'll be talking about today, Stoicism for Dummies, so that he can come help me learn Stoicism because I'm a freaking idiot. But we're going to get into his book and all that good stuff and any other ways that I can self-emulate myself on my own show. Hey, the book came out January 11th of 2024. Tom Morris is one of the world's top public philosophers and pioneering business thinkers. He was a Moorhead Kane Scholar at the University of North Carolina, where he graduated with honors in religious studies and then went on to Yale University, where he earned PhDs in both philosophy and religious studies. He taught for many years at the University of Notre Dame and received many grants and fellowships in support of his work from such institutions as Brown University and the National Endowment for Humanities. He's the author of over 30 groundbreaking books and a legendary speaker whose electrifying talks re-engage people around their deepest value and reignite their passion for work and life. He's now available by Zoom and other platforms, as well as in-person talks, and he's to serve business navigating our time of radical and disruptive change. Welcome to the show, Tom. How are you?
I'm good, man. It's good to be here with you. I enjoy what I see you post on Facebook, too.
Yeah, it's mostly just bitching, complaining, and moaning. But when I say it, I get it off my chest, and then I forget I ever said it. But you write some brilliant stuff, Tom. Give me your .coms. Where can people find you on the interwebs?
Oh, Tom V as in Victor, TomVMorris.com is my main site. There's a secondary site called the OasisWithin.com. Come to either and see what I'm up to.
Now, you've been a philosopher all these years. You write these great posts on Facebook, unlike me. And how many chicks do you get with this thing? You must just have a whole mess of Victoria's Secret models or chasing
Keith Richards had no idea that it could be philosophy that would do it. Mick had no idea. No, it's an amazing thing because people get excited about philosophy done right. I mean, who knew? I mean, my mother kept saying, who's going to pay you to know this stuff? I wish I could have told her while she was still alive. Pretty much everybody, So,
wow, that's just amazing. Funny. Who's going to pay it? Well, sometimes mom's wrong. Moms are always wonderful, though. Sometimes, I should say. Most times, I should say. Anyway, so give us a 30,000 overview of what's inside your book, Stoicism for Dummies.
Okay, yeah. I was asked to do, first of all, people call me the OG of Stoicism because in 1998, the novelist Tom Wolfe had a book come out called A Man in Full. It was #1 on the New York Times bestseller list. I had just done a book called If Aristotle Ran General Motors for Henry Holt, big New York publisher. And I was writing Philosophy for Dummies. They asked me to do their first philosophy book in the Dummies series. And I got a call from my editor one day. He said, hey, Tom Wolfe's written this book about a rich Atlanta businessman who gets in trouble, gets thrown in jail. He discovers the Stoic philosophers, and it changes his life. And now everybody's saying, who are the Stoics? Who are the Stoics? Now, remember, this is 1998. And so he said, if you will write a book in 90 days about the Stoics, we will make it a New York Times bestseller. We'll publish it in 6 months, which is unheard of, in publishing. And he said, we'll put all the weight of the company behind it. And I said, I'm writing a book called Philosophy for Dummies. I can't take a break. He said, you got to take a break, 90 days. And so I did it. And I turned in a book called The Stoic Art of Living. This was how Stoicism for Dummies got started. Turned in this book on day 89, and he calls me, he says, geez, I don't know how to tell you this, but Wolf's book fell off the New York Times bestseller list, and our publisher's not interested anymore in the Stoics. And so I forgot, Chris, I forgot to get a contract. I should have talked to you. So the book took 6 years to get published because nobody at that point, people stopped caring about the Stoics. Now, Ryan Holiday comes along with his marketing background in 2014 with The Obstacle is the Way in 2016 with the Daily Stoic. But this book came out in 2004. I mean, 10 years earlier. And so time passes, and I get a call from the people at Dummies, which is they have this great, history of publishing and having their books in every bookstore in the world. And they said, hey, look, Stoicism has become big in business, in the military, in sports, and entertainment. Should we do a book called Stoicism for Dummies? I said, yeah, you should. And they said, okay, you do it. And I said, I don't have time. I'm writing 2 or 3 other books, and I've got all these speeches. And they said, well, you really should do it. And so I called an old graduate student of mine, a guy named Greg Bassham, who's a historian of philosophy, and he's just a really good philosopher. And I'm a kind of a conceptual guy. So I said, Greg, you want to write a book together called Stoicism for Dummies? He said, dude, I can't believe you're asking me this. I've been in a deep dive on Stoicism for about 4 months now and decided to write my own book. But yeah, let's do it together. I wrote it with a former graduate student who's a great philosopher in his own right. The book came out about a year and a half ago. And geez, Chris, the emails I'm getting from people saying, you helped me understand Stoicism completely for the first time ever. Your book helped change my life. There's a lot of humor in the book. There's a lot of energy in the book. We tell crazy stories about the Stoics. But we basically tell them that, look, the Stoics believe half of wisdom is knowing what to embrace and what to release. So many people go through life releasing things they ought to embrace and embracing things they ought to release, and they get it all backwards. So the Stoics wanted to help us understand the inner is more important than the outer. Get the inner right first, the outer will take care of itself.
And when, you're the pro here. So I call Stoicism the owner's manual to being a man, a masculine.
Yeah.
Is that accurate? We're logic and reason in how we process data. Women, of course, process emotion first, and that's the beauty of the yin and yang of our opposing sexes that complement each other. But to me, when I read Stoicism, I grew up with an alpha grandfather. He taught me how to be a man. I grew up kind of on this cusp of where a lot of men became feminized and became very feminine. And so I had this dichotomy of different pictures to look at of femininity, masculinity, alphas, betas. And so I had this, I was young and I was looking at all these people going, why does this person have a healthy relationship? This person doesn't. This woman's angry all the time. This woman is just the greatest matriarch ever known to womanhood. In my opinion, she was my grandmother. A little bit of a bias there, but she was. And for all I've seen, and for me, it embodies the true masculine alphas that I grew up with. My Boy Scout leaders, anyone I've seen who fits that mold. My grandfather, and so you could build on that.
You see something there that's there to be seen. I mean, why did it get picked up by Ryan Holiday, by Donald Robertson, by Massimo Pigliucci, by Tanner Campbell, by a lot of guys who are writing on there. Some really great women writing on Stoicism too, like Nancy Snow. But the original Stoics themselves, Zeno, and then you leap and his followers, Cleanthes, Chrysippus. You leap forward to the Romans, Epictetus, Seneca, Marcus Aurelius. They were concerned with how to be strong in a healthy way. How to be a strong human being in a turbulent world. That's why people relate to them so much now. The philosophers we're talking about didn't live in easy times. I mean, Seneca, for example, who's one of my favorites. Yeah. Seneca became so popular in Rome that the Emperor Caligula started thinking about having him killed.
Yeah. Didn't he exile him, or was that?
He did exile him, and he ended up, and then another guy, Nero exiled him, and Nero ended up telling him to kill himself, basically saying, you kill yourself or I'll send my guys to do it.
Wow.
I mean, this is how the philosophers, the times they lived in. And so it's not, these guys had plenty of time, just kind of sit around and philosophize. What do they have to say to us in our busy, crazy time? They lived in busy, crazy times in their own way. And so that's why when they got it right, their wisdom echoes down the ages to us, not to how to be strong in a brutal way, how to be strong in a virtuous way, how to be strong in a healthy way, how to be a strong person inside so that your relationships are strong, so that you help make your community strong. I mean, that's what they're all about. So you're right in seeing that strength was something they were really concerned about. In fact, there was a guy almost nobody talks about, 2nd century Roman guy named Heracles. Heracles said, your life, Chris, my life, everybody's lives can be mapped by a set of concentric circles like an archery target. In the innermost circle, get your own heart and mind as strong as they can be. Then you can contribute to the next circle out in a positive way. Your family, your closest friends, get that strong. You can contribute to the next circle out, your neighborhood, your workplace, your town, the next circle out, your state, the next circle out, your nation, your world. He said every circle should contribute in a positive way to the next circle, and the outer circles should reach back and support the inner circles. I mean, what a beautiful way to think about community in the world today.
Yeah. I mean, and we need it more than ever. I mean, masculinity has been under attack for a long time. We've kind of seen what a gynocentric world looks like in this experiment over the last 60 years. And I have a huge dating pool. So I have a not a dating pool. That sounds like I'm dating them all. Wow. I have a huge dating group that we do meetups and in-person stuff because this apps doesn't work. And I've dated all my life. I've had my Playboy years, and then I've started trying to settle down, but good luck finding people. But this 5,000 group. And one of the things that women constantly complain to me about, and it's very valid, is they can't find masculine men. And even though, all this feminism and I'm a boss babe and all this sort of stuff, deep down, when you get them alone, they are seeding that they desperately want a masculine man. And one of the things they want is that emotional intelligence, that non-reactionary, non-emotionally reactionary logic and reason that a man brings to the table. All my girlfriends have always called me the Rock. They're like, you are my rock. I can be in an emotional storm. I can be losing, maybe up in my feelings too much, they like to call it. And you will hold space. You will hold frame, you hold space and containment for the feminine, as I quote one gal who refers to it as that. And so to me, it's almost, it really is almost a teaching of emotional intelligence and a hierarchy that most men have. They're masculine, let's put it that way.
If you're right. I mean, the Stoics thought that two things set us apart, human beings, from the rest of the animal kingdom: our ability at rationality and our ability for relationality, to use our reason to form healthy relationships, solid, stable relationships, solid like a rock relationships. So Marcus Aurelius, and I know Marcus means a lot to you as he does to me, and that's what turned Ryan Holiday around and sort of got him excited about philosophy. Marcus Aurelius's Meditations. Marcus, at the beginning of that book, thanks a lot of people. A lot of the people he thanks for the insights that have made him the person he is. A lot of the people he thanks are the guys, his father, his grandfather, his adoptive father, people like that. But he thanks his mother, he thanks, like you were talking about your grandmother earlier. We do benefit from the full range of humanity, but we need to cultivate who we are in a healthy way, not trying to be something else, not trying to be somebody else. We need to be, each of us, who we are in the best possible way. And Marcus often found himself falling short. As a reader of the Meditations, I know, one of the things people love about Marcus is he's honest. He's vulnerable. He says, man, I screwed up yesterday, but I'm going to try to do better today. The Meditations is full of that, like, oh man, I shouldn't have done what I did. I shouldn't have said what I said. And in fact, I won an internet competition last year. There was this big conference on Stoicism, and the person leading the conference from down in South America or someplace said, Meditations is not a good name for Marcus Aurelius's book. Suggest a new title for his book that better reflects the contents. And I just blurted it out and won the competition. How I Try Not to Be an Asshole by Marcus Aurelius. And the organizer said that is perfect for
I'm writing the opposite of that book, How to Be an Asshole, evidently, according to people on the internet. So evidently I've almost got it's as thick as War and Peace.
But, we were talking in the pre-show before we came on, we were talking about our animals in our lives too, our pets, and how Marcus Aurelius and how the Stoics can help us deal with that crazy thing we have to get a grip on, that our animals don't live that long. We've had wonderful dogs who died at the age of 4 or 8, or we have one that's 14 years old now, and I'm thinking, oh man, I'm on thin ice with her now. But I know you lost a dog, a really loved dog a year ago. Yeah. We were just talking about how the Stoics help us deal with the fragility of life, with the transience of life, with the fact that, they look back to some philosophers of the past, in their past, like Socrates, and even beyond him to Heraclitus, who lived 500 BC. And Heraclitus said, in that age, he said, everything is always changing. It's try to step into the same river twice. He said, you can't do it. The waters are always moving on. And with the people we love, with the animals we love, it'll sound silly, Chris, but we had a wild rabbit in our backyard 2 years ago. She almost became a pet. She was so funny. She was so great. And a predatory bird took her out one day. And it was just, if I hadn't studied the Stoics, if I hadn't built up that inner strength that they talked about, it would have been a bad day. And that way with it was a bad day, but it would have been much worse. As we were saying earlier before we did the show today, the Stoics help us to be strong in times of grief. They help us to understand we're not here forever. Let's make the most of it while we can.
It's early in the show, so I want to get a misnomer out of the way. The one big pushback I get from especially men online that makes me mental is, and I know where this programming comes from because they don't want to be taught this, but they believe that being stoic is shutting off your emotions. It's like shoving them down, closing them off, denying they exist, and just letting them fester inside until you die. And I'm just like, read the book, for hell's sakes. That's not what it is about.
Yes, that's right. It was my dad's generation. It was Clint Eastwood. It was Clark Gable. It was, so many of the movie stars of the day were almost trained not to show emotion. Be a tough guy. Don't show any emotion at all. And the Stoics weren't about bottling up emotion. They were about cultivating your beliefs, attitudes, and emotions so that you will only have healthy emotions, and learn to express those emotions in a rational way so they don't take control of you. So it's not the tail wagging the dog, as the old expression says, because there's so many people, men or women, who are sometimes like little toddlers. They let their emotions get the best of them, or I should say the worst of them. And one guy, my book, I have a little novel called The Oasis Within that some people have said is the most stoic novel they've ever read. It came to me as a movie in my head, and the book came out several years ago, and a CEO in California wrote me this email where he said, page 5 of your book changed my life. And of course, I got to find out what. I didn't even remember.
What's on page 5?
I know. I didn't remember what was on page. So I write this guy back. I said, tell me what you mean. And he said, he's the head of an international firm, financial firm, real estate firm. And he said, I've always been a screamer. If I don't get what I want in a negotiation, I'm the guy who yells. I'm the guy who screams. I'm not proud of that, but that's the way I've been all my life. I'm in the midst of the most difficult international negotiation I've ever been in. And he said, I just read page 5 of your book. And so for the first time ever, I'm being reasonable. I'm being calm. I'm not screaming. So everybody says, hey, what's wrong with the boss? What's happened to the boss? He said, but I want to tell you something. You've got an image on page 5 of your book. And I know it relates to Stoicism, but you've got this image that has made such a difference for me so fast. He said, I'm calm for the first time in my life. And I think as a result, I'm going to get the best result of a difficult negotiation I've ever achieved. I said, that's what the philosophers have always wanted for us. That's what the philosophers have always wanted.
And for me, and this has become hyper focused, but I've always known it. For me, when I deal with my dating groups and I hear what women talk, what they want, and what they're looking for in a man, a masculine frame, a man who can hold frame, a man, they're going to challenge him because that's what women do. If you understand human nature, they want to make sure that he's on guard and he's on his thing. But women look to a provider and protector. And as men, we're designed to look around at danger and evaluate it, and strategize it. If we do war or marauders are coming to kill our community and our family and children, back in the old days, they just wipe you off the map, because competing village, we must wipe them off, or worse, some of the things that they keep people alive for torture, but make them watch like Friends, the TV show. Anyway, I'm just kidding. They didn't do that, folks. That was against the law back then too. So anyway, but we have to be able to deal in danger. We have a penchant that makes it easy for us to kill, and we're designed that way because that's the world we live in. We are the protectors and providers. We are the security guards of the world and life, and we do the hard things. And so we need to not be consumed by emotion, because emotional decisions are the worst decisions. Ask any gambler, ask anyone who makes them on a consistent basis, or look at their history. And we don't have the ability, we don't have the time for that. When you're in a crunch time where it's war or some sort of emergency or an engagement, you see so many men that will leap to protect women or run into burning buildings. You saw that with the firefighters in 9/11. We have to be able to do that in a manner that we're not overcome with emotion, where we can look and see strategy. Okay, I need to hide the wife and kids. Someone's at the front door. They're kicking it in. I need to find my gun. We need to go through a logical process. We need to have a strategy of how are we going to fight the invaders? How are we going to fight the marauders? How are we going to protect our family? We have to plan. We have to do all these things to think about. And we can't be emotionally reactive. I mean, there's time for fight or flight in a situation where, I don't know, some sort of emergency is happening right in front of you and it's fight or flight or die. But for the most part, we have to have that process. We have to be able, war, we have to strategize, to win wars so we can protect our family, our community, whatever the case may be. And business is really just war. I mean, when it comes down to it, it's modern war, really. And, business-wise, you've got to be able to play these different games and stuff to do. And so for me, it is the essence of manhood and masculinity.
A lot of people who've even heard of Marcus Aurelius's Meditations, and we'll just stick with that for a minute, they don't realize it was written on the battlefield. It was written during a time of war when he was encamped with the troops. He didn't stay back in the palace. He didn't stay back where it was safe in Rome. He went out with the troops. And at night, when he'd seen the worst of the day's battle, he would go back into his tent and try to think through all he'd experienced and come up with wisdom about it. And when people push back against philosophy and against Stoicism and say, wait a minute, you're talking about using reason. Sometimes in life's emergencies, you don't have time to reason things through. The Stoics knew that. So they thought that if we train ourselves with reason, we will train our intuitions, we will train our emotions so that we will instinctively do the reasonable thing, the rational thing, the right thing, without having to sort of, let's have a debate here while the house is on fire. No, we don't use reason in that way. It's when we're off the battlefield, we train ourselves with modes of responding, reacting, and taking initiative that can be done in a split second in dangerous circumstances. And like you say, whether we're talking about times of war, whether we're talking about difficult business situations like the CEO who was writing to me, we have to be able to have instincts that don't just blow with the wind, but that are rooted in rationality, in real wisdom, in real virtue, because the word virtue comes from the Latin virtu, which meant strength. A virtue is like honesty, like courage. A virtue is supposed to be a strength that we bring to any set of circumstances that might be challenging. The people who can't bring those strengths, who don't have those strengths, are going to be overcome by the circumstances. And I see this, Chris, a lot in championship athletes. They don't depend on their circumstances for their confidence. They bring their confidence to their circumstances. Same thing with courage. Same thing with all the virtues that Aristotle listed and that the Stoics valued so much. In fact, the Stoics kind of boiled it down to 4 virtues. Aristotle had 10 or more. And the Stoics said, look, you need the virtue of wisdom. You need to think well, have wise perspectives on situations, be able to size things up quickly. You have to have the virtue of justice. You have to know how to have a right result come from your actions. You need to have courage so that when you're facing pressure, when you're facing danger, you can still do the right thing. And you have to have temperance or self-control, which a lot of people lack, so they never develop themselves. They never grow. I know you're a guy who's going into the gym. I always kind of went into the gym to do a little exercise and kind of feel like I could check that off. But when I was 58 years old, I'm 73 now. When I was 58 years old, I said, I'm going to go into the gym 2 hours a day, 7 days a week for a year and see if that makes a difference. Because I saw old guys in my neighborhood who could barely walk down the street, you know? And so I did that. And a young guy comes up to me about 2 months into the year, and he says, hey, you make more noise than anybody else in this gym. I said, dude, you should hear me get up in the morning and walk to the bathroom. I'm like an old man. You know, he said, I want to be your workout partner. I said, why? He said, you're the only person in here really trying. And so he does with me. The Stoics talked about encouraging each other. They talked about the importance of consistency in what we do. Chris, this guy every day would say to me, come on, Tom, you're looking strong. Let's put on more weight today. Let's do a little bit more. He met me when I was benching. I'd never benched before, Chris. I was benching 85 pounds at the age of 58. He said, come on, you're doing 20 sets of 20 reps. You got to put it up higher. You got to do 90. You got to do 100. And so every day it was like, hey, Tom, you're looking strong today. Let's put on another 5 pounds. When I was 63, I was benching 315 pounds.
Damn.
Because of this friend, his name is Don. Because of his consistency, his encouragement. And I remember thinking, and I hit that for 5 years until the pandemic shut down the gym. Every week I do 315, work my way up to 315. And I had to stay in the 300 club, you know, but he really convinced me 2 things. Like I say, his name is Don. We all need a Don in our lives. Somebody to encourage us, to support us, to insist on our consistency day to day. But secondly, we need to be a Don for the people around us. Everybody needs an encourager. Everybody needs. If he had said to me when I was 58 years old, okay, Tom, here's your goal. You're going to bench 315 pounds. I would have said, that's the stupidest thing I've ever heard. There's no possible way. But what he did was he helped me set incremental goals in a consistent way. And when I wanted to not show up, like one day we're in the gym, getting ready to leave, and he said, see you in here tomorrow. And I said, well, Don, tropical storm's on the way. It's supposed to rain really hard tomorrow. And you know what he said to me? He said, not in here. And I'm thinking, there's a guy with consistency, right? And
you're lifting all that weight, you can just hold the roof up. You know, take turns.
So anyway, consistency in the moral life, the Stoics said, is just as important as consistency in the physical life. And in fact, when you get the two together to go together, you have honesty and courage, you have the right kind of generosity, you have the right kind of ability to set big goals as well as small goals. The Stoics believe you could make this progress in life where you could inspire a lot of other people to do good things as well. And that's a great worldview.
You know, and I somehow we need to advertise this more. You can still have feelings as a Stoic masculine man.
Yes,
I can have feelings that, you know, I'm going to cry when my dog dies. Okay, that's going to happen. Yes. My girlfriend leaves me. I'm going to go count how much money I'm going to save. No, I'm just kidding. I'm being funny.
But you should. You're honoring their value when you have that reaction. Sometimes Epictetus went too far. One of the Stoics who's kind of like a drill instructor. I mean, Seneca was like a motivational speaker. Epictetus was like a drill sergeant. And Marcus was like the guy you meet at AA who says, yeah, I had a bad day today. Yeah, me too, you know. But sometimes Epictetus takes it too far. He thinks you're not supposed to grieve. You're not supposed to have any negative emotions at all. He doesn't mind positive emotions, but he doesn't like negative emotions. But I'm saying, listen, when I was at Notre Dame, one of my colleagues' son died in a mountain climbing accident. And it would have been wrong for him to say, oh, that happens. People die. Okay, next. You know, he grieved his son's death because that was a reflection of the value of his son. Now, the good Stoics will say, don't let it take you apart. Don't let it put you in a tailspin. Don't let it ruin your life. Your loved one would not want that. But if you don't recognize the value they had in your life in this world, you're being you're being Mr. Spock with your emotions, and that's not Stoic.
Yeah, Definitely. You know, we had Fred Hayes, the astronaut from Apollo 13, on the show. And it was interesting. He wrote a book called Never Panic Early. And that was what they taught him in NASA. And part of it was these guys were naturally stoic and masculine back then. But they would run, I think 10,000 failures. Like when they were practicing to go into space, they would throw everything they could at them at failure. They'd pull a switch and something would fail, and they would have to scramble and fix it on the fly. And so what they were always taught was never panic early. In fact, I was talking to him about, the HBO film series, and I was like, there was some drama there and sweating and people, dealing with the stress of the situation. He goes, that never happened. He goes, the only time that I broke a sweat or had a little bit of worries when we were coming in and the plane was overheating a little bit when we were coming in to the Earth's atmosphere. He goes, the rest of the time, I was cold as ice, man. And he goes, the thing is you can't afford to panic. You can't afford to get in that emotional state because you will fuck it up. And NASA would teach that to us. If you get emotional, you will fuck it up. You will make a wrong decision.
I learned this in an interesting way last year. I met a bunch of astronauts last February, a year ago, and one of them, a guy named Tom Marshburn, he's either done more spacewalks or the longest spacewalks, and he's been the oldest person to do one out of the International Space Station. And I talked to him about it, and he said that every single spacewalk, when you're in the part of the space station where you're going to leave, the door's going to open, you're going to leave, he said there was a moment of stark terror, a moment, always a moment. And I said, how did you deal with that? And he said, first of all, you make your world as small as it can be. You're not thinking about the infinite beyond you're getting ready to step into. And he said, there's safety guards, there are tethers and stuff, but anything can go wrong. You know that. He said, but you remember your training. You remember all the times you've practiced this. You think about the job at hand, and this displaces from your mind any of those negative emotions that could keep you from doing your job. I love that. You make your world small. You think about what your job is. You think about what you're supposed to do, and you don't let those negative emotions take any control of you whatsoever. And people on the outside would say, man, the guy's so cool. And some people say, the guy's cold. And he said, no, I'm disciplined. And that was one of the virtues, according to the Stoics.
I love it. Disciplined. The way I do it, I think I make my world small and in control is I operate that I am the center of the universe. And I know this is going to sound narcissistic and Machiavellian as hell, but dark triad traits are part of being masculine, healthy balances of them. I try and keep mine healthy a little bit, but some get out of control.
They say everybody's got a little narcissism in it, and it's just not letting it get out of control.
Women seek it. I mean, there's a reason women seek hybristophilia, which is where they're attracted to killers, men who are on death row in prisons, and they go marry them and all that stuff and fantasize them.
Wow,
You've probably seen, who is that pitiful young man who killed the health insurance executive recently? That guy has a million marriage offers. And part of it is because women's brains, and we're all operating a hind brain when it comes to caveman shit, both of sexes, but they still see that a man who can kill is a man who can keep them safe.
Isn't that something?
Yeah, it is. If you study hybristophilia, it's quite interesting.
We talked about Keith Richards and Mick Jagger earlier. When people clearly have some form of power, whether it's social power through fame or their wealth, or whether it's physical power through their too many hours in the gym, or financial power, whatever kind of power it is, then a lot of people around that individual feel more protected. And it comes from our ancient past, right? Like you say, there are survival needs in early human prehistory that wired our brains. And now we live in very different circumstances in most ways, but our brains are still wired that way. So on come the philosophers like the Stoics, and they said, look, You are what you are. You're wired in a certain way. Now let's make the best of that we can so that it works for you and not against you. That's what they were always. Stoics had this view that very, very few things in life are intrinsically good or intrinsically bad. Most things have the value we give them by how we use them. I call it the functionality principle. How does it How about wealth, for example? People criticize Seneca because he was very wealthy at the Roman court. But Seneca believed that the value of wealth is all in how you use it. You can use it badly or you can use it well. This has to do with almost everything. In fact, I was studying a 17th century philosopher many years ago, Blaise Pascal, and I discovered some ideas in his thought that I turned into what I call the double power principle. I say in this principle, the more power something has for good, the more equal and opposite power it has for ill. Anything that has power to help us also has power to harm us, and vice versa. It's up to us how we use it. So the philosophers have always been discovering principles and ideas like this. So if you come across something in your life that's very powerful, you see a reaction among people that's very powerful. You say to yourself, okay, how am I going to use this phenomenon? What am I going to learn from it? How am I going to use it in my own life? Like, you don't say, oh, this guy killed a health executive, so I'm going to go find one to gun down. No, you don't do that, but you recognize how people are attracted to power. And you say, how can I use the power that I have in my life in a positive way for people, right? How can I provide a path forward so I'm leading people in a healthy direction? And that was what Marcus was all about. That's what Epictetus, that's what Seneca was all about. So that's, again, why the Stoics are getting so popular again, because they help us understand just crazy stuff in our world. There's all kinds of crazy stuff around us. And the Stoics had their versions, and they put a lot of thought into it, and they learned from each other, like me learning from my friend Don. We learned from each other. And I know I met one of Don's neighbors that I met not too long ago, is a vocalist for a heavy metal group called Lamb of God, a very popular group, Randy Bly. And Randy got turned on to the Stoics a few years ago, too, because, again, when you're living in a world where there's a lot that's crazy, you want principles and ideas that can, like a flashlight in the dark, that can help you see the path ahead, that can help you with solid footing in your own life. That's why, Chris, before the show, I was talking about, I used to do really theoretical philosophy that involved a lot of logic and modal logic and metaphysics and stuff that 37 people in the world could understand. And I said to myself at one point, do I want to spend my whole life doing stuff that hardly anybody can understand? And then about that time, some local business people in South Bend, Indiana, they had heard about my classes that were popular with the students. And they said, hey, could you come and speak to our group? You're supposed to be a really good teacher. Could you come and speak to our group? Did the philosophers ever think about something like success or ethics or partnership? And I said, dude, I don't know. Let me look into it. That's not the kind of stuff I studied in graduate school. But then I discovered there's this whole practical side of philosophy that everybody was ignoring for the sake of all the theoretical stuff. So you go into a philosophy class in a college and it's like, how do you know you exist? Or the world popped into existence 5 minutes ago, exactly the way it was then. Prove me wrong. That was my first philosophy class. And I'm thinking, really? I mean, is there a practical side of all this stuff? Yes. But we had forgotten it, trying to make philosophy more like logic and mathematics and the sciences. We had forgotten all the practical stuff. So for 40 years now, I've been rediscovering the practical stuff that you have been using in your life, that I've been using in my life, that I try to bring a little bit to Facebook every morning. I didn't know when I left Notre Dame 30 years ago, I'd end up giving 1,200 public talks in football stadiums, basketball arenas for 10,000 people at a time, on people's private jets, in the jungle, in all kinds of crazy places, because people want to make sense of their lives. And that's a good sign in a bad time.
And we live in, what's the old Chinese curse? May you live in interesting times.
Exactly.
It seems like everybody's kind of living in challenges to themselves. To build on that astronaut story, too, we had a gentleman on the show, Hazard Lee. He was a U.S. Air Force combat pilot instructor.
I know him.
You know him. Oh,
he's awesome. A good guy. He's a very good guy.
Yeah, he wrote the book, The Art of Clear Thinking.
I got a copy right behind me.
Yeah.
He sent me a copy not too long ago. Yeah.
And, he talks about the split second, I forget the term he uses in the book. Maybe you remember, but there's a term he uses in how men can think and I think most Air Force pilots have to adopt this if they're women too, but they have to be able to make the calculations in split seconds, and they have zero room for emotion because they're flying a $35 billion plane. There's a couple stories. There's a book where he's got to make ditch bail decisions or try and fly to the next base. He's in Iraq. He's under fire. He's under war. Maybe he's protecting a base. The plane's, he doesn't know if he's got enough gas to make it to the next place, but he can't land because the base is under fire, and he's having to make these balance. And he also knows some personal things that are in danger to himself. Not only can he get shot out of the sky, but if you bail out of a plane that's, operating at a certain G-force, you're going to endure some bodily harm that might be permanent. I mean, there's and then of course, probably no one in the Pentagon's to be happy it ditched a $35 billion.
You don't get the hero's welcome when you show up.
You get a bill. We'll take that in payments, sir, out of your paycheck.
We'll deduct it from your paycheck. It was like I got to be friends. I had this weird friendship for 32 years. I got to be good friends with a TV producer, Norman Lear. All in the Family, Sanford and Sons, all those TV shows. Oh, yeah. He was a tail gunner in World War II bombers, and he told me stories exactly like that. The number of hazards you face, and that's why I love that our friend's nickname is Hazard, the number of hazards you face and the quickness with which you have to make decisions where it doesn't look like any of those decisions are really great. And you have to what's the minimizing the damage, minimizing the risk now, maximizing the benefit. How do I do this? And you're moving so fast. I mean, it's not like when you're driving your car way too fast. It's like when you're in that jet. I mean, you really have to be split second. And it's amazing that we can cultivate that. It's a skilled behavior. Some people just seem to be naturally better at it than others, but it can be cultivated. Again, back to the Stoics. Anything good they believed can be cultivated. And that's what they were trying to help us in their works. And of course, Epictetus didn't write anything. He just talked to students, but he had a student, Arian, who took notes. And that's how we have his manual, his discourses. Just like Socrates didn't write anything, but Plato took notes. Xenophon, who was a military man and a really good student of Socrates, he took notes. And we have the memorabilia from him. And actually, there was a guy named Peter Drucker, kind of father of management science, who said Xenophon's book, The Education of Cyrus, that I'd never heard of at the time. He says the greatest leadership book ever written. And I said, I got to get a copy of this book. So I found University of California Press did a version. I read the book. I've read it 4 times. I said, this is probably the greatest leadership book ever written. So he takes philosophy. He's a military guy. He wasn't even in a leadership position, and he gets behind enemy lines. The king they're supposed to be supporting gets killed or something, and somebody's got to lead their army back to Greece. And they say, Xenophon, you're a smart guy. You lead us back. He didn't have any training in this, but he had enough grounding in philosophy. He had enough grounding in wisdom and virtue. He got the army back safe. And it's in another book called The Anabasis. But Drucker and others have said, what is philosophy good for? Philosophy can make you a better leader. Philosophy can make you a better person, a better decision maker under stress, a better decision maker under duress. I'm writing a book called The Gift of Uncertainty. And my astronaut I was talking to last year, Tom Marshburn, I said, can I use your story in my book? He said, yeah, man, if it'll help people, tell them my story. So it's all about how philosophy can help us deal with uncertainty, how philosophy can help us deal with the unknown, because we've got it swirling around us now. And we have to know how to keep our heads when everybody else is losing theirs.
The other thing, you mentioned the origins of Epictetus, Seneca, and some people. Marcus Aurelius would be horrified if he'd found his journal had been printed, to my understanding. At least that's what Ryan Holiday says. It wasn't meant for publishing.
It was his private notebooks. I mean, what if your private notes to yourself got published?
Mine are mostly just lots of drooling and you like ice cream, pretty much. Yeah. I bang rocks together and shit.
But isn't that amazing when you think about that? It wasn't a polished book that he wrote for publication at all. It was something just for his own use. And he thought we should all kind of take notes on life. You take notes when you're a student in school for the test. Life gives us a test every day. We better be taking notes in life. That was his attitude. And at first he would probably be embarrassed to death and he would shake his head. But then once he heard how much it's meant in all our lives, he'd probably say, okay.
I mean, we live in a very emotional world now. We live in what I call a victimhood competition world, where and I think a lot of this has been created by social media, dark narcissistic virtues of, of constantly, brand building and trying to, I don't know, be the next Marcus Aurelius and stuff.
Yeah.
But it's this thing where there's this emotional victimhood climate where, oh, you're a victim. Oh no, I'm a bigger victim than you. I've got, more victims going on.
Hey,
It's
political
there's
movements
almost
are based on that,
for it.
right? Yeah.
There's almost like a bonus for it, and it's celebrated. People be like, "Oh yeah, you're a big victim. You won the Victim of Year Award of the Week this week." There, it's really.
You're right. It's a funny political time. That people who one political party denounces another political party for being too involved in victimhood, and then they become the biggest victimhood political party of all time. Yeah. It's like, what is this? People are rushed to the bottom. I mean, again, the philosophers we've been talking about today, they were all about victory, not victimhood. They were about being strong, not about complaining about what's going on in the world, but taking charge, making things better. They were all about the strengths we bring to every situation, not the complaints we can issue.
Yeah, it's pretty wild. Final thoughts as we go out on Stoicism, why people should study it. I think your book is probably a good place for people to start, especially those people who go, it's about repressing your emotions. And I can feel an emotion, like I can feel anger, I can feel upset, but I don't have to fully emote it and flesh it. Women usually have to experience their emotions because they're very valuable and important to them, and that's their first process. But men, we can take and pick it up, and we can look at it from logic and reason and go, why do I feel jealousy? Why do I feel anger right now? Do I need to emote this? Or maybe I just need to figure out why I'm angry, and I'll fix that so it doesn't happen again.
Look at the picture on the book. Here's a picture on the book of a guy looks like he's exhilarated. He's gotten to the top of a mountain. He looks like he's having a moment of joy, a moment of exhilaration. That's an emotion, but it's emotion that's proper to that moment. And he's not going to get so excited he falls down the side, right? So most of the Stoics said, look, I want to eliminate the negatives from your life. I want to help you eliminate the negatives from your life so you can experience the positives. It's like Epictetus said, hey, I was a slave, but guess what? So are you. We're all enslaved to something. I want to be your liberator. I want to free you from all the false beliefs, false attitudes, false emotions that keep you from experiencing your natural joy. So they were not against emotion. They were just against unhelpful emotion. Emotions that tangle people up and tie them down. They want us to be liberated, to be our best and do our best in the world.
I'm still a slave to coffee and espresso, but it's a
me too, a little bit.
It's funny how that becomes. I used to laugh at my grandparents. I'm like, that is the nastiest shit. Why do you old people drink that crap? But now that I'm old people, I'm like, this is life. This is the fountain of life.
Oh, and my first sip, it was like, oh my God, this is horrible. And then now I'm like 5 cups a day. So in graduate school, I was 24 cups a day. That was a little bit too much.
Those are rookie numbers, as that one guy would say in the movie. 5 cups a day. But final, as we go out, any pitch you want to take and give to people, .coms, where you want people to follow.
Oh yeah, TomVMorris.com, or they can just Google me, Tom Morris Philosopher. That'll take you to my website. Come shoot me some questions. Shoot me an email through. There's a contact page there. You can email me. I'll answer your questions. I love philosophizing with people. I love getting into deep issues with people. I try to make time for that. People said to me, people who work for me said, why do you answer all these emails yourself? I said, listen, if I'm just reading Plato and Aristotle and Marcus Aurelius, but I'm not hearing what bothers people now, I've only got half the formula for being of help to people. So TomVMorris.com, go to Amazon, type in Tom Morris, look at some of my books. I've written a book about how to deal with difficulties in your life called Plato's Lemonade Stand. I've written a book about how Steve Jobs overcame all his negative emotions to build such a valuable company called Socrates in Silicon Valley. I've written so many books that I would love to hear people's reactions to. So let's keep philosophizing.
Just get on Amazon and just hit the cart all button. I don't think there is one, but you know what I'm saying. Just Google Tom Morris and buy all his books. He writes just the most amazing, brilliant stuff. I mean, I honestly on Facebook, I've got a lot of great friends and they write good stuff, but some of them are pretty blasé. I mean, they're just like, my kid graduated, and that's great. You did your kid thing. I mean, it's great. but it's just not for me on a daily consumption basis. And so I've unfollowed so many people. I like have people from 1984 that I followed on Facebook or something. I don't think it was around then. But I have this weird shit that pops up like, when the hell did I follow this person? And then nowadays I just get like groups and ads. Like I barely see any friends anymore. And it's hard for people to, I like intelligent stuff. Like Sam Harris is my favorite podcast. I like people who are thinkers. And that's because I'm not one, but I love your content, so people should check it out as well.
Thanks, man.
People should also follow. Thank you. Thanks for coming on the show. We really appreciate it. And you're welcome to come back anytime. I'd love to have you, Tom.
This would be fun.
Like
we got so much we could talk about, man.
And just like Johnny Carson, not a lot of people get that offer. And check out my channel for Stoicism channel. Or I fucked up the joke.
I got you brainwashed today, brother.
I had it right there. Yeah. Nude Stoicism on OnlyFans.com. Follow the Chris Voss channel over there. Anyway, no one wants to see that. Don't Google that, people, or you're really wrong if you want to see me naked. Anyway, people pay me not to be naked. So there. Anyway, guys, order up his books wherever fine books are sold. Stoicism for Dummies, out January 11th, 2024 by Tom Morris. Thanks, Martis, for tuning in. Go to goodreads.com/Chris Voss, linkedin.com/Chris Voss, Chris Voss 1 on the Tickety Talkity, and all those places. Be good to each other. Stay safe. We'll see you next time. And that should have us out.